everybody, and welcome to the first that we know of collaborative comic book making podcast. My name is Kurt Brugel,
I'm Jake Jacobs.
and we're working on Turbo Pit Fighter. This is a 20-year comic book in the making, though in the last 20 years we haven't really been working too much on it. But we have been working on it for the last year and a half, and what we've come to is the completion of the first 6 pages, and we're printing them ourselves and we're selling them so we can get something into everybody's hands. So I went ahead and printed up some copies, and I'm printing these on a Workforce Epson printer. We have a link in the below where you can purchase these copies, as well as I have 2 other copies of teasers, which are in the same kind of format, which is 11 by 17 cream color paper, 2 of them, 8 pages folded and printed out, and then bagged and board and sent out with each purchase. Now, the other thing, too, is we're going to have a link below that link of purchase. And if you're an indie comic book artist or a person who is talking about comics on YouTube, we want to do an exchange with you. So we'll send you copies of our comic, and you just have to send us 2 copies because Jake and I are not in the same town. So we both have an ability to review your work. You get a chance to review our work, and then we can come together and talk about the indie comic book industry at large. Topically, we would talk about how to make comics, how to find your audience, and then the future of comics. So if you're interested in that, then please check out the link below, make a comment. I can send you the link. You can find my email or Jake's email in our About section here on YouTube. But with that being said, we have pages to be working on. I'm actually heading to page 8 of the first issue of Turbo Teaser, and the second, the first issue officially of Turbo Pit Fighter, but it'll be a part of the second teaser that we're working on. Jake, how you doing today, and what are you working on?
I'm doing good. I'm working on page 16 of issue 2, the pencils, first blue pencil, then regular pencil. And just so people know, Turbo Pit Fighter is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi comic with ass-kicking violence, a strong female character, and it's a great story that has a lot of original plot elements to it. But basically, you got a society gone to shit, gone to crap, where the whoop, beep, beep, where the richest family in the world kind of took over with all of their oligarch pals, and they became such a huge force. This is just the backstory of the comic, but they became such a huge force in automating society that they were able to eclipse even the U.S. government, and they ended up getting hostile with the U.S. government because they were running afoul of this law and that law, and it just kind of snowballed until they said, well, why do we need to bother obeying laws? Because we have a greater military might even than the U.S. government, and we have a greater presence, surveillance state, and employing people and propaganda, So our story begins where they're basically just thinning out the population to make it more efficient based on the algorithms, and Turbo is going to be caught up in this as a child of about maybe 9 or 10. And then she grows up into a woman of about 24. And, she's blessed with certain genetic characteristics that make her more of a survivor than others, and stronger than others by comparison. So she ends up being a pit fighter, hence the title. but there's a lot more to her than that. And Kurt and I have been figuring out this plot and the backstory and the characterization all along the way. We welcome you to go back and binge any of our episodes. And what episode number are we on now? I know you have them memorized.
70. And I just changed the title card color from blue to red to indicate this sort of
A, ch-
second
a change.
passing into, yeah, I don't know what it is.
We're at a
So yeah,
plateau.
so we release episodes every Sunday. We meet every Sunday Eastern time around 10 or 11 in the morning and go till about 2. And we make 2 recordings. One is this making of the Turbo Pit Fighter, which we just talk about what's going on in our lives and what we're working on. If we have questions for each other, we're able to communicate and hammer those things out. And then we also have what's called comics that influence, where both of us have a comic we bring to the podcasting table. We give each other some time and we comment on what each of the individuals bringing to the table. And that will probably be the section that will change over or back to, because we did do 2 comic creator podcasts where we had creators come on, Robin Ator from Kyra, and then Jason Sandberg for, what was his next comic book name again?
Jupiter.
Jupiter. Yeah, sorry about that, Jason. But and once again, this is what Jake and I are working towards. Now, if we don't have people who are interested in coming on, we're just going to talk about old comics or even new comics, because I got my eye on a couple of new items that I want to go ahead and pull the trigger on and purchase and or try to get the artist to send us a copy, and we'll send a copy of ours to them to get something going. But yeah, we're on episode 70 and counting.
Episode 70. Yeah. So we usually do like a little story catch up, where we remind viewers what part of the story we're in. And then there's always some conversation about where we're going in the story, because as we fill in the word balloons and the descriptions, the captions, we have to figure out what they're going to say and what it's going to mean. And that's always very contemplative. Like right here, I'm writing, the ladder at left will take you straight down to the aqueduct. I've learned my lesson about making things too wordy, but this was unavoidable. I have a very wordy word balloon right here, and I guess the only way around it would have been to break it up, and I could make like some other word below, like take like a little bit, like a third of it here, and then make it less here, and then I would have to move my figure over here, and I'm considering it, but I don't know. I
So
I figured, look,
can I interject, because this is a question that
sure.
I was literally thinking of when editing. I think the last video or the video before, and we were talking about comic books being too wordy, but then we were also saying that you kind of need the words to help stories move along. So the question's this: why do you feel you need that many words at that compositional position on the page?
Well, I had it even longer, and I narrowed it down. I Twitterized it, which is what I call using economy of word. Um, but yeah, she's going to be saying, this is a very important part to the whole graphic novel. This is where we're introducing the package, and we haven't alluded to it before. We alluded to the fact that Turbo was a messenger, and she was doing a very important run. But this is the first that we're going to be seeing this package, which contains a very important MacGuffin. So the text is: "This is the package for the headmistress. Guard it with your life. but do not open it, and for God's sake, do not let anyone near it. Um, I could I could narrow that down to, guard it with your life, but do not open it. Or I could say, guard it with your life, but for God's sake, don't let anyone near it. But or maybe I can move, maybe I should move a one sentence of that over here, and then have these kind of like descending balloons that are connected. Because up here she says the delivery was as described, and then I could say here, this is the package for the headmistress, and then because, yeah, like, I don't know why this is not that much text. We have more text in other places, but I think it's because the panel is relatively small, and there's a lot coming in on this page. This is going to be the layout of the page, because I wanted the whole bottom of the page to be reserved for kind of like a panoramic view of the burnt up landscape. After the bombs all fell on the checkpoint, and Turbo's retracing her steps. Um, and we're going to talk about the package. We're going to start to talk about the package. Turbo's going to start wondering what the package is, here, 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 and all throughout. Um, but yeah, so maybe I will do that. I mean, it's going to be a pain in the ass to move the figure of Turbo over from there to here, but I think that's what I'm going to do. So, I'm not going to.
So, is there any imagery in that wanting to have, that the size of that text box? Is there anything wordy wise you could pull out and then place as imagery in the panel?
This is the package for the headmistress. Guard it with your life, but do not open it, and for God's sake, don't let anyone near it.
So,
I mean, no,
do you have to say this is the package? Is it? Isn't
um,
it? Isn't it like?
yes,
Because
because you're introducing what it is, and this is the first mention of that,
what
right
about
here.
putting like just a written box? It says this is the package, and it's a square with an arrow pointing to the package. Then not having to put it in the balloon, it helps shrink the balloon.
Yeah, I'm going to shrink the balloon by moving the first sentence up here, and I'm shifting Turbo over here as she's putting on her jacket. So I am going to minimize it further, but I think if we do that, yeah, that seems like more of a comedic thing, where you point to things with an arrow, like
I know,
an underground uh, technique or tactic or whatever. Um,
right?
but yeah, I understand that. This is going to be a wordy section, because Turbo is in her thoughts. Um, the previous page is probably the worst that I've ever had, is in terms of word balloons and crowding, because um,
Yeah, yeah.
I
That's
felt I felt the need to insert one, two, three, these two panels, where they weren't originally in the rough layouts. And to me, it's important, because she's kind of like muddling the sensory feeling of somebody touching her hair, and she's confusing her encounter with Embra with the care that and affection that she got from Sister Ray. Um, and here, like, there's a bunch of text here, but it forms kind of like a column, so it's not like breaking things up so bad. And here, the same thing, you know but um I've reduced the text to as little as I could, and this is just what it's going to be. I think maybe once I have a uniform type size, some of these things are, some of these will get smaller. Like this might be a little bit bigger, this might be a little bit smaller. So these things might have to bump up and bump down, but we're going to figure that out before we ink the page this time, so we can make it easier for the process. I like this page though.
I really do too.
This is page 15. This is after the fight scene and
Issue two.
after all that action. So I think, it's okay to slow down because you really need to give, some time to develop your plot, and this really does that. This is talking about Embra wanting to get taken away. It talks about the exchange here at the pharmacy. um, I was looking at some of the earlier pages, and there is some areas where there's some text, and then there's areas where there's less, and that's I think why we're coming off this action sequence where there's relatively less text, and I think you kind of have to give your plot, you have to convey your plot. I mean, I don't think anything. Denny O'Neil said there should never be anything in your storytelling that's unnecessary, right? There should never be any
Right.
kind of like side tangents, right? um you know
Inside jokes.
right, and some people do that because they're like,
Yep.
hey, I have a gag, that I want to put in. I need to fit it in somewhere because it's a funny punchline and I want to get it in. Denny O'Neil's like, no, like, unless it's central to the plot, because he says, and I notice that when I'm watching a movie, because every step of the way, whatever you're bringing up, it's got to be a breadcrumb for something that comes later. Otherwise you're wasting space that you could be, you know just hammering on your themes, and and laying eggs, for later, and reinforcing, characterization, right? Like, instead of having them say something, useless, have them say something that shows their personality, so that you reinforce their personality, characterization, right? So, I have that in mind. Another interesting thing here in this sequence is that I'm making the um, I'm making the package the shape of a football.
Yeah, I saw that.
um, and I'm making it look rather like a football. And the reason for that is so that it kind of hits the subliminal reference to, like, when people say that, that's that's the political football. But it's also kind of like a reference to what they call the thing that the president has, for the nuclear codes. They call that the football, actually, right? The nuclear football.
Oh.
And because I think in real life it is shaped like a football, like you open it up and it has like buttons to press or something. Um, but of course, if you're watching this, you're on the inside, and we can tell you the spoiler. What's inside the package is that it's going to be a prototype weapon that is able to convert radioactive peas into a kind of like very powerful projected energy, weapon, aka a gun. But the interesting thing is that when you first shoot the gun, there's kind of like an initial blast, which is maybe the effect of a bullet, but then there's a delay, and then the secondary blast is more like a grenade, or actually like a mini H bomb, or it'll be a lot more powerful. It'll be able to take out walls and structures and stuff, or so maybe like an artillery shell, because there'll be some kind of nuclear reaction that I can't explain the science of right now, but in the future
You're
it
working
will
on
be
it.
viable. They will develop the technology between now and 2228. So so yeah, that's so this is the introduction of that, and this is going to change not only our story, but this is also going to change the world. This is going to be
Well,
how, um, I guess, when they're duplicating. I mean, this is going to be when the orphanage is taken down and burned by the RM forces. Turbo is going to be charged with her next mission, which is taking the package to Elavena, and that's going to be developed in issue number 3, the return of Elavena, and
it
I say
doesn't get
return.
used. It doesn't get used at the orphanage. I thought it got used at the orphanage.
No, Turbo is going to use. She's going to use
So
a wet.
Sister Ray doesn't get a hold of it.
No, Sister Ray has ordered this to be manufactured by the pharmacist, and
Right.
he's like the only one with the tech to do this because he's secretly a resistance guy. And his pharmacy's been closed for a while. But he did this in exchange for all these peas, and she's basically cashing out. I have a line here where they're checking the weight and potency of the peas here in this like glass case, but um, she's saying to the wife is saying to the husband, it's 99% pure, her best. And then she goes, yes, Liza, it would seem Sister Ray is planning to pull out.
Ah.
And and that gives us a
Ah.
hint that Sister Ray maybe has intel that that they're going to be attacked by the RM like imminently, or maybe
Yeah.
she's just gearing up for it because the RM is getting
It's,
more dangerous and they're in the sector
it's
and
just a
they're running
matter
out.
of time.
Yeah, they're running out of places, and and they have a structure, and but they also have all the children in the orphanage. So, that's where we're gonna hear about Dishvan the slaver, and there's gonna be a line where oh, if he's here, that means that they're going to exploit the children, stuff like that. Um, so yeah, that's a little catch up with the section I'm in. You want to do a little catch up with the section you're in, or you want to talk about movies and TV and popular culture?
Well, let me just share this.
What do you
I
got?
I on
Oh, you
my
did some life
birthday,
drawing?
I did some life drawing, and I am one of the guys on this podcast that's yammering about it all the time, yet had not been able to get down to a really decent place called the Gibby Arts Center in Middletown, Delaware, every first Saturday from 4 to 7 right now. They hold a life drawing event. So really good friend of mine lives down there, invited me down. We had lunch beforehand and then went and did it. The reason I'm bringing this up is I am a very staunch supporter of the thinking, if you will, on how to best improve one's drawing skill and its observation. There is no other way of improving your drawing skills than observation. And what observation means is drawing from life. When you're drawing from your head, you have a limited amount of information that you can rely on, which is usually things you've drawn in the past, whether it's from observation or from other comic books or other reference material. But when you really see somebody who has the ability to sort of draw realistically in a very expressive and also quick looking way, is that they completely understand the power of observation. And this is a 20-minute drawing. So, and just to boast my skills at it, because I love life drawing, and I don't get to do it enough because it's a little bit of a hike down to Middletown from where I'm at. But I actually probably did this in about 17 minutes. Because by now, this is the last 20 minutes of the 3 hours of drawing. So what happens, and I'll just kind of flip, this was the 20 minutes before that one.
Mm-hmm.
Then this is, I believe, a 10 minute. And then this is like a 5 minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was actually I really enjoy I like this one a lot. This is where my line um, starts opening up. So you can see that my confidence is there with the mark making. I've got the model. She's rested very well in her comfy chair. And so all I need is a little bit more time. Then these are kind of hard to see, but these are 2 minutes. I'll get a better one here. So here's like some smaller. These are 2 minutes. It's all you get. The timer goes off, and you've got 2 minutes of just moving your
Yeah.
pencil or whatever
Just
instrument
the,
you have, and it's all
those are.
gestural, right?
Yeah.
So this is another one, and I use uh, this is a 4B woodless graphite. So there's no
Mm-hmm.
wood here. It's just pure graphite. And I
They used to
buy
call those
these. I
ebony
buy these.
pencils.
These are $2.99. I keep my shavings because then I can use them for smudging drawings in the. Oh, see there, just like that. So $2.99 at the Acme. You can get them. And then I think that was like the second one. Oh yeah, here you go. So that's my first drawing of the evening, and you can kind of see there's a lot of looseness, but it is very tight in comparison to my last drawing.
Yeah, I did drawing
And that's
at the
3 hours of drawing.
at the end of June. I went to the drawathon at the High School of Art and Design, and
Yeah.
they had not only they had a nude model room, and then they had a cosplay room, or like a cafeteria with a bunch of different models set up. They had long poses, short poses, and there was easily 200 people there. Um, and it was like it was a shock for me because I haven't done it in so long, and so I was like so rusty and
Yeah.
bad at it and slow. But you start to get better and better as the more you do. But
So
it is
there
something that you
is,
should do weekly,
but
or
here's
as
the
often as you
secret.
can.
People often ask me, other artists that are there, and they ask, usually in confidence, they say, "Oh, hey, can you share with me your secret on how you do it so well and proficient?" And I was told this by my mentor, Michael Economos at MICA when I was at school. When you do life drawing or observing drawing, you absolutely cannot think about making art. That's the first line of defense you have to get through in your head. You've got to think of it as just making marks and seeing. Nothing's right, nothing's wrong, nothing's good, nothing's bad. It's not art. This is not art. This is just the residue left from me observing with a pencil on a piece of paper. This observing on a piece of paper with a pencil is now in my head. And so these marks and action can be a part of my tool set that I would pull from my head in order to make, as I'm doing right now, inking marks and even kind of washes as I do with graphite, water soluble graphite as I'm coming in. And you might have noticed earlier in our program today, I printed out real quickly an 11 by 17 version of this paper just to take some graphite and start blocking in where my areas should get darker. Because this page for me is not, because we're printing this as a black and white comic book, I don't want it to be left in areas where somebody would assume color would be added in later. So I have to take on the responsibility of really creating a well rendered, as best as my abilities can serve, black and white comic book page.
Whoops.
Bless you.
Um,
Bless
yeah,
you.
I was looking at the teaser, and I think the art is the best when there's a really good range of value going from really really light to really really dark in almost every panel. And that when I think when panels have a lot of gray in it, it tends to, I think, you know turn off the eye. It's less dynamic and less, contrast, less dynamism. And when you open up to a spread and you see lots and lots of lights and darks and mediums, that's
Yeah,
when your eye has fun, because you want to just dart around and see, okay, first I want to see the art, then I want to read the story. So I think it's great. Like, if you do look, I know you have your tools and you go in and you bring those real mid-tone grays in there. But then, you know, after that, it's really great if if you pull out lights and you add in the darks and you add the dynamism, and you're thinking about the this area of highlight is going to lead the eye. It is going to direct. I mean, you have a whole other subliminal layer to work on. Besides the composition, besides the outline, and besides the sound effects, besides the the word balloons, you have this whole other subliminal level of leading the eye by your the direction and the volume of your highlights, and then the direction and the volume of your shadows. Right, I love the flexibility that you have, like, and it's the same really with color, but most people don't think about it when they're putting in
correct.
color.
Yes, yes, yes. They always think of it as the color, not the value. And
Right.
I am taking a painterly attitude, and even in my own criticism, and I'll take it one step further in looking at the teaser. Um, yes, there are areas where I find there to be too much gray value. In other words, middle range gray value. But what it means is that I got to start doing more white lines. So, or like I just realized I was going to do this, but I'll do it. I'll do it later. So this was already inked out. This character here, this was already inked out. Then I put like a white gouache wash over the top of it to kind of muddle it out. But I'm actually going to go back and redo all of that line work, which is based on your line work. So that's one of the
Yeah.
things that I'm doing is I'm looking now. If like, correct me if I'm wrong, and I keep asking this question, and so someday I will. But was Turbo going to be color? Were we going to do it in color? Because
Well,
your pencils have. Go ahead, go answer the question, and then I'll kind of move from there.
what I did play around with the idea of is a very very special duotone effect. um, and it
Black and
never
white
got.
still.
Yeah, well, I was thinking like a dark color and then a light color.
Mm,
So
mm,
let's say
mm.
you have dark
We had
turquoise
talked about that. Yes,
instead of
yes.
your dark line. And then if you do this, it would probably have to be coated paper, I would think, because you want it to stand out off the paper. But then I was thinking, like, if we use spot color for the line art, and then another spot color for the the second color, that's a duotone. And what you have is a dark color and then a light color, like, let's say, amber, right? And the whole book could conceivably be dark turquoise and amber. Well, what happens if you have a 10% tint of turquoise and a 50% tint of amber mixing together? Well, you have a completely different color, but it's still only two plates. And Photoshop actually has duotone mode, where you can do this. It allows you to see in WYSIWYG what it looks like when when you have two spot colors, but also you're tinting them back with a halftone dot, and letting them mix in different proportions. And probably the thing to do is to do like a one page sample first
Yeah,
before you undertake that. But I was thinking about that back in the day, and now I like what we're doing here. And I think there's a lot of different ways to go. um, I mean, one possibility is also laying the pencils back on the inks at some
yeah.
point, and then
I was thinking the same thing.
erasing it selectively, and then or using your dodge and burn tools
You're in
selectively.
Photoshop. Yeah, you're thinking this in Photoshop.
Right, right. Because you can play around with it that way. But yeah, if anybody's watching and you want a quick art tip. um when I was drawing that hoodie, you always want to leave a little bit of space around the edge of the hoodie, where it encircles the face. That everybody should know that when you're doing art and you're filling in shading and hatching lines, you have an opportunity to not go all the way to the edge. And you can define an edge because edges pick up light more so than other things. And that goes with every figure, that goes with every hand, every foot, every finger. It's a way of conveying the lighting. And sometimes it's not there, sometimes it is. But I think in black and white, illustration, you should always at least start out with not going all the way to the edge, leaving that edge, using the edge to define a highlight, seeing how you like it, and then you could always color in straight to the edge if you think you don't need that. But whenever even the sound effect letters, you like when I'm filling in, I was like, okay, let's edge like this and see how that looks first, and then we'll do the whole thing.
Well, that's exactly why we did the teaser, was because we wanted to get something done, get it in people's hands, but we also wanted to see in a very quick and rough way how things were turning out for us. And so instead of having a long bout of edits and redos and all that kind of fun stuff, once all 32 pages were completed, like 2 years from now, because we're only getting together every Sunday, um, we now have given ourselves the ability to see our comic book printed. And I always think in the way of, no matter how much marks I make or how many marks I take away with white or laying in gray and stuff, it still gets printed out as a flat black. It's just let's say the uh, printing marks are just wider to be lighter as they go along, and obviously more denser when it gets darker. And then you and I were just talking off camera before we launched on today. You have a Brother laser printer. I have an Epson inkjet. And so you were going to do some printing on your side of the turbo teaser so we can kind of match the two. I have a copy of this heading your way right now. You should have it by tomorrow. So you're going to be able to see what I have in the way of printing, and then what you have in the way of printing, and then even get more specific in criticizing the output as features. Because these pages in this teaser are not finalized. So when we release the turbo official first issue 32-page comic book, full color cover, sada sada sada, printed from a company, um, it's going to have a lot of adjustments. I'm even prepared to redo pages. So this is not let's not make Kurt cry process here. Um, I'm expecting Jake to be, and he is. He won't pull punches. But the punches maybe not as hard as they used to be when we worked together back in the 90s. But we definitely want something that is very, very specific, and we're relearning our power to compromise because he has a vision for Turbo and I have a vision for Turbo. So hence why we think we're probably the only two guys that are willing to get up once a week and sit down and go back and forth about making a comic book together, because there is a lot of compromise that comes in when you're working with
Yes,
somebody creatively.
if anybody knows another podcast online of two people sitting together making comment. I know there's a lot
Side
of
by
people
side.
sitting around making comics, but I don't know
Right.
anybody that's documenting the whole thing,
Right.
like this. And if so, please
We
share
want to
it
know.
because we
Yep.
want to create a network of people that we could, because we probably would have the same audiences and we would love to cross promote, and because once
Yeah, we don't want to
you
be the only ones. We don't want to be the only ones doing this. It's silly.
yeah, right. I
Let's
mean,
get more
and it
people
all,
out there. More
yeah,
people need
it
to be
also.
making their comic books, telling their stories. Let's go.
So before we run out of time, Kurt, I know you said you saw Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
and I'm probably gonna see it. I'm probably gonna see it this week. So I did ask you to hold that in abeyance, but
Sure.
one I saw two movies in the last couple of days. One was this Gal Gadot, the Wonder Woman. She was on this huge Netflix release that they just dropped on Friday night, and a big budget action movie. What they do is they did the same thing with the Chris Hemsworth, which is the character that played Thor, and they had a movie called, I think, Extraction, a big budget action movie with lots of car chases and lots of like explosions and buses getting overturned and pyrotechnics. And I would say pretty good story. Kind of fantastical. But this one that premiered on Friday, um, I want to give it a review. I won't do any spoilers. But Gal Gadot, the Wonder Woman, is something Stone. I was gonna say Emma Stone, but she's like, oh, Rachel Stone,
Rachel
and she
Stone.
she plays the Nine of Hearts in the Charter, a secret organization that looks out for the well-being of the world and society, but
Oh,
they're
thank God.
so ultra secret that nobody must know about them. And when the story starts out, she's embedded with MI6, and they don't know that she's part of the Charter. But you know the thing that runs the Charter is this highly advanced device, like a chip, with like these little tubes and like that lights up, and it shines. And when it's placed into a supercomputer, it can literally hack anything in the world, and it can tell you where people are, and it's that thing where they use every cell phone as a microphone, and you know it antics ensue from there. But people should watch this. It
Really?
was fun. If you don't take it too seriously, it's a lot of high flying, thrilling action with Gal Gadot in the lead as even more than Wonder Woman, where she's supposed to have super strength, and like the choreography of her fight scenes, even more. Fight scenes and judo and flipping around and getting on motorcycles and running and diving and swimming and all this stuff. It was like James Bond, but in a team, right? So there's like a
Ooh.
team around her, and that's a recurring theme about the fact that she's not alone and she has a team and stuff. So I think people should see it. Don't take it too seriously. It is one of those things where every single scene is like a last minute escape. You know, and so that kind of like you kind of have that thing. Well, my character's never gonna die, right? No, there's no chance that she can get shot. It's just a question of how she beats all these guys. Um, and I would say it's worth watching. The same thing with the Chris Hemsworth thing, really good action. You know, if you have Netflix and you pay for the membership, it's really good action hit. You know, and you know, it's a decent popcorn movie. Um, you know, as far as the acting, okay, you know, it's kind of melodramatic. You know, the plots are a little bit predictable, but you know, you find yourself suckered in and saying, well, okay, I want to watch the outcome, and you know, and then you know, at the end, of course, they're like, oh, this is probably just going to be starting a whole new franchise. You know, if
Well,
they
that's
make a
their
sequel,
hope.
yeah.
That's their hope. Yep.
So I saw that, and I know you probably haven't seen it, but you know, that's my lukewarm recommendation. My the other thing, which I hope you saw, crossing my fingers so we could discuss a little, was an old Tim Burton movie called Big Eyes.
What?
No, okay.
No.
So and sorry if you have to, like, you know, go paste in a screenshot of you know, the
That's all right.
poster or whatever. But yeah, you know, I had an art show opening last Tuesday in Nyack, and you know, it's a group show. I put in three paintings of my big faces with the big eyes, and I put in some three illustrations that were pen and ink that were like, you know, that were kind of like gallery quality fine art, you know, pieces. And I can give you some photos if you want to like stick them in for the final of this video. But you know, it got I got to talking with people about, you know, oh, your characters have big eyes, and you know, they're really colorful, they're weird, you know, they have expressions, they have personalities, and somebody, my brother actually recommend he started saying, oh, it's like that movie Big Eyes, and I was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I knew exactly the artist that they're talking about. You remember, you know, that kitsch artist, probably the most famous kitsch artist.
Oh yes, 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 yes. I've seen it. I've seen it. Yes,
You did
yes,
see the
I have.
movie.
Yes, I did. I did. I did.
As soon as I said the word
Ah,
kitsch,
it's
so it was
it's yep, yep,
the
yep,
story of
yep, yep. Dude, it's
a
really
woman.
good. It's really good. It's
Yeah,
really good.
it's the story of Margaret Keane, who
Yep.
was a painter that allowed herself to be kind of like bamboozled and dominated by her husband, who was a charlatan, and he passed himself off as a painter, but he
Yeah.
wasn't
Oh
really
my god.
a painter,
Wow.
but he insisted that he was a painter, and they worked out an agreement where she would do all the paintings of these big-eyed waifs, these little children with these big haunting eyes, and this was all Margaret wanted to paint. She was inspired, and you know, she found her theme and she found her muse, and this was what she wanted to paint over and over, all different things, you know. And that's, you know, like, you know, what galleries love is that repeatability, right? The art world seems to love that
Everybody
re-
gets one.
repeatability on a theme. But this was happening in the 50s and early 60s. Started out in the early
Yeah.
in the late 50s, early 60s. You go for about 10 years to like the late 60s, and you know, they figured out, oh, instead of selling original paintings, we can sell repros and we can make a killing. And so they were
Yep.
selling, you know, lithos and seriographs or whatever. They weren't even signed and numbered. It was just like cheap art, and everybody wanted these hypnotizing children, right? And everybody that's listening, you've seen these pictures we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
But the controversy came when Walter Keane, you know, took credit, and he was the promoter and the sales guy, and he opened up a gallery, and he was like a star effer, right? He used to love like hobnobbing with stars, and so he would also have this great promotional idea where he would donate a one of these big eye waif, you know, pictures to any star that was coming to town, you know, and they were in the San Francisco area, and you know, and then that worked out in their favor because they had this publicity reporter, right? This kind of like gossip reporter guy that was on their side, and they, you know, they used to use the paintings as an entry to get all these juicy stories on all the celebrities, you know, and business owners and stuff. So highly recommend the movie. It's the
It's
least
on
Tim.
Netflix.
I don't know. I have Roku, and I just
Okay.
punched it in and it came right up. So whether it was Netflix or some other service, it's on there.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
and it's probably the least Tim Burton-y movie Tim
Yeah.
Burton ever made.
Yeah. It's a
This was
great
in his
movie though.
early
It's a great
early
movie.
days. Yeah, and it stars Amy Adams, who was Lois Lane, of course. But it was also that the guy with the German accent that was in Django Unchained. Do you know the guy I'm talking about?
Christoph Waltz.
Right, thank you, Christoph Waltz. He was amazing in this role,
Hmm.
and it's one of these roles where
Oh, he's so
a
dastardly.
character that you love to hate,
Yep.
and the one thing I want to pull, and the reason I bring this up because why it was meaningful, because there is a lesson, you know, in the movie, and it talks a lot about the commercialization of art, and it talks, they have these New York Times art critics who are like looking down their nose at this, at this artist the whole time, and like everybody in the art world is like shaking their heads like, why is this so popular? I can't believe it. It's so kind of like gimmicky and so redundant, and there's a line that that Walter Keane says to his wife Margaret Keane when they're having trouble getting their art into galleries, and he was like, "Don't you understand? It isn't it isn't the art that sells. It's the it's the opportunity, right? It's the right place at the right time, right? In
Luck.
other words, it's like if you get hung up in a gallery, then that automatically puts you in the pantheon of artists where you're going to sell some pieces and you're going to have some credibility and some gravity, right? And he was saying like it doesn't matter if the art is the greatest thing in the world. You have to get it in front of people. It has to be promoted, right? And a lot of this is like music. How many songs that we have stuck in our head from the 70s and the 80s that are like, oh God, that's garbage. But it would, because it was played on the radio every 20 minutes, it's worn out a pathway in our brain that will never go away, right? And you say, well, why that artist and why that band, why that song instead of somebody that's clearly better, more original, like better chord structure, better lyrics, better everything. And the reason is because they is payola. In those days,
Yes.
they literally bribed the radio disc jockeys and the
Yep.
program managers to get their stuff on the air instead of the other
Yep.
guy, or they slept with somebody, or they whatever, it could have been, all these different, reasons why that ended up, you know, and so that's what we like to do on our other segment is we like to bring out comics that didn't necessarily go through the big gatekeepers, and we like to talk about movies that stand the test of time, even though they might have not been a big studio release. And we like, and of course I love like underground music, and I love underground art, and this is what people like us are on YouTube for, to try to talk about. I mean, even this Tim Burton movie, it was not his biggest movie, but it was a cute story, true story, and it really has a bunch of different lessons, not only for art but also for um, the way the story treats how women were relegated to just be wives of just to be like kind of like secondary to men in society, and that was a theme that they hit on a lot in the movie. And Margaret Keene's kind of maturity, over the course of the movie is kind of like a reflection of the women's empowerment movement, and putting men in their place and standing up to men and stuff like that. So a couple of interesting messages in the movie, and of course Tim Burton is one of my favorite directors. Do you want to talk about what Tim Burton means to you? good or bad?
No, we always try to keep these episodes bite sized, which is about 45 minutes long. We're already about 10 minutes over, so we want to let these
Oh,
good
okay.
people get to back to reading their comics if they're not already reading them while they're listening to us, or making them if they're not already making them as they're listening to us. But as always, Jake, you bring in some really, really good stuff, and we'll keep talking about it and sharing because it's really about good storytelling, whether it's a comic book or a movie, a television show, animation, yada yada yada. It's really about good
Yep.
storytelling, and you and I are at that game. That's what we want to ultimately be
Yeah.
recognized as. So we put together our first Turbo teaser, the first 6 pages of Turbo Pit Fighter, the story. I have printed copies. There's a link below. You can go ahead and make a purchase. If you're an indie comic book creator or having to do with the indie comic scene and you just want to have a conversation with us about how to make comics, how to get an audience in the future of comics, then please contact us. There is a form down below that helps us sort of cultivate and bring in information so Jake and I can make sense of it and go from there. Because we only
Right.
meet on Sundays. Jake and I have other jobs. Sometimes they're referred to as real jobs. And we also just have lives, which I think both of ours
Well, I
is
don't have much of a
heading
life.
down. I was ready to
I'm
say,
a middle
both of
school
ours are.
teacher. I'm a middle school teacher in the Bronx. I don't have too much of a life.
Yeah, and
Besides that,
my business has got me going back to school for some further education. So I'm double downing, if not triple downing, through the week. So, but with that being said, thank you so much
yeah.
for joining us. We do this every week, and share
Send
with
us
us.
your
We have
art.
a community
Send
tab,
us.
polls,
Go ahead. Send us.
yada yada.
Yep. Join our community tab. You could put comments. You could write as much as you want. You could recommend books, movies, comics, whatever. But also send us samples of your art if you're an artist, and if you're a podcaster, send us a link and let us check out what you got.
Right. Cool. All
So
right, Jake. I'll see you in our Comics That Influence episode in about
see you
five
next
minutes.
week, man.
All right.
Yep.
Later.